Hi everyone, it's Michael Brook from Rapid Couples Counselling. This video is about how to pick a good relationship partner. I see a lot of couples come to me, and if you look at some of the challenges they have in a relationship, often these challenges could have been avoided if they'd have picked a partner at the beginning that may have been more compatible for them. And so a lot of the difficulties in a relationship can be avoided if you pick someone with whom you can have a good relationship with. This video is just a brief outline of some of the things that you should probably look for if you're single and in the place of looking for a good relationship partner. The first thing is, what's their 5-year plan? Do they have a 5-year plan? The form of relationship success is very specific, and people need to be able to look into the future and see a future together they both want. If you want to check out the video for the formula for relationship success, click here. That goes into a lot more detail, but it's important for the two of you to be able to have the kind of a plan that's compatible. So for example, if one person wanted to travel around the world and the other person wanted to have a family and go nowhere near an aircraft, then that's a bit of a challenge. So both people need to be able to look in the future and see a life together they both want. The next thing is education level. This has been statistically proven that people who have approximately the same educational level tend to have more stable relationships. So if you have someone with, a couple of doctorates and 2 or 3 degrees, and if they get together with someone who's a truck driver or a childhood teacher or something like that, well then there may be a problem. Educational level is statistically significant, and it's been indicated as being a marker of relationship success if both people have approximately the same education. The next thing is the big 4 you need to agree upon, right? Sex, money, kids, and in-laws. It's really important to have these basic agreements sorted out. Once again, I will pin a video that I did about the basic agreements. So if you click here, then you'll get to the video on the basic agreements that need to be in place in order for a relationship to be successful. I won't cover that more, but it's really important to agree upon that. Sex. How often do you have it? When do you have it? How much do you have it? Who's around? The next thing is money. How it's made and how it's spent. If there's a disagreement about money, that can cause long-term problems in the relationship. Kids. How many kids you have? So do you want to have 1? Do you want to have 2? Do you want to have 8? If one person wants kids and the other one doesn't, well, there's a big problem. All right, if you need to organize that at the beginning, you need to be honest at the beginning, right? And the final one is in-laws, how you deal with your extended family. If you come from a very tight-knit family of where you've got 5 or 6 brothers and sisters, and they're all in each other's pockets all the time, and mum and dad are coming over all the time, and your partner is an only child that is really happy being by themselves, well, they might feel smothered by your extended family. You need to have agreements upon how this works out, right? The next thing is a similar belief system. So what that means is, you need to sort of roughly have a similar worldview. A really good example of this is for belief systems is political belief systems. If I'm ultra conservative and I somehow find myself in a relationship with someone that isn't, or someone that's on the extreme left, then there's going to be continual disagreements in the relationship. So similar belief systems is important for having a good relationship. The next thing is a health orientation and hobbies. This is a really important and can be a big source of incompatibility. If one person's idea of fun is sitting down having a Netflix marathon for 24 hours as their body melts into the couch while they have a dozen beers and 5 packets of chips, and their partner's idea of fun is getting on a bike and going for a 50-kilometer bike ride, well, you can see there's a fundamental incompatibility there. So it's really important for you to have a similar orientation in terms of what your community health is, and also what your hobbies are. All right, having similar hobbies or compatible hobbies is actually really helpful. Next thing is risk tolerance. Risk tolerance is important because if one person's really, really okay with taking very large amounts of risk and the other person isn't, then there can be a big challenge in their relationship. I once knew someone who was a paraglider pilot, and he used to love jumping off the edge of hills hanging underneath a dirty grape parachute, and that was his fun. But his partner was highly risk averse, and it got to the point where she said, it's either the paraglider or me, and he said, okay, well, I'll choose a paraglider. And so, because she couldn't deal with the fact that he did that on a regular basis. Risk tolerance is important. Next thing is the ability to regulate their emotions. Does your partner or potential partner have the capacity to regulate their own emotional states? I say this over and over and over to every client. The single greatest determinant of whether a couple can successfully navigate a relationship crisis is their capacity to regulate their own emotional states and to confront themselves. I highly recommend to people, when they're looking at getting into a relationship, looking at their partner and asking the question, does this person have the capacity to regulate their own emotional states well? Now, at the beginning of the relationship, when people are in the dating phase, typically people will put their best foot forward. And often there can be a bit of false advertising. Often at the beginning of the relationship, people will be a lot better regulated than what they might be when they're not putting their best foot forward. So sometimes people can seem like they have a much better capacity to regulate their emotions, but over a period of time that can dissipate. But nevertheless, it's really important to consider when you're potentially dating someone and looking at maybe having a relationship with them, do they have the capacity to regulate their own emotional states? Next thing is, and this is kind of more important as people get older, do your lives fit together? It's particularly important for people in their 30s and 40s and 50s and beyond, is if you're looking to find a partner in those age groups, do your lives fit together? Say I'm an international pilot going overseas all the time, and so I'm gone half the year, right? Is that something that you want? If you work day shift and your potential partner always works night shift, you have to ask the question, will you ever see each other, right? Do our lives fit with each other? So it's really important to be able to ask that question. And if the answer to that question is no, then it's probably not a good idea to select them for a relationship partner. And so it's important for you to be able to go, do our lives fit together? And sometimes you can be really, really attracted to someone. Sometimes the sparks can be flying. And that person is wholly inappropriate for you to have a relationship with. So you need to consider that's possible. Next thing is, if they have kids from a previous relationship, do you like their kids? Once people get in their 30s and 40s, a significant proportion of the population do have children. And so sometimes you're not going to like their kids. Sometimes the kids aren't going to like you. And sometimes that can be outcome determinative. So you need to sort of get to know their kids and ask the question, do they like the kids? And if you have kids, well, your kids like their kids. This is important. The next one is, how well do they deal with conflict? Now, not a lot of people will think about that at the beginning of a relationship, but it's important because you need to be able to go, how well does my partner deal with conflict? Because conflict is a central part of every relationship. Do they avoid it? Are they conflict averse? Are they conflict okay? Do they hit conflict like a bull charging at a bull fighter? How will they deal with conflict? And is the way they deal with conflict compatible to your style of dealing with conflict? Can you fight well with each other? So this is important because I can tell you from working with hundreds of couples that many, many couples will get to the place where they will have to deal with conflict. Conflict is an essential part of every long-term relationship. Not necessarily because everybody fights, but there will come a time when something will come up. And the final one is, how does your partner deal with uncertainty and change? Because change the only constant in life is change. So how well does your partner deal with change? How will they deal with uncertainty? Do they lose their shit whenever something happens and kicks them out of their kind of cocooned little world? Or do they embrace change? Or are they constantly changing and there's never anything fixed? So you need to look at how well do they deal with change and how do they respond to that. If you've got a similar 5-year plan, you've got a similar education level, if you agree upon the big four, you've got a similar belief systems, if you've got a similar orientation around health, if you have a similar risk tolerance or compatible risk tolerances, if you both regulate your emotions well, if your lives fit together, if your kids get along, if you deal with conflict well with each other and you both deal with uncertainty and change well, then the probability is you're going to have a good relationship. You need to look for those things. It's really important to set up your relationship well. Now, it's really also important now. Lots of people talk about red flags, and I'm going to briefly talk about a couple of things that it's useful to avoid. First one is the inability to regulate their emotions. If your partner's constantly losing their shit, or constantly having fits of jealousy or fits of rage, or gets angry about the slightest thing, you need to think really, really long and hard about whether or not you want to get involved with them. It's absolutely essential for someone to have the capacity to regulate their own emotions, because if someone doesn't have the capacity to regulate your own emotions, once you get in a relationship with them, they will bring that emotional dysregulation into your relationship and turn your life into a nightmare. So it's really important. The next thing is drug use, whether that's excessive alcohol consumption, whether that's other recreational drugs. Drug use is a problem, and the problem is that over a period of time, it might, at the beginning of a relationship, it might seem like it's not a big problem, but over a period of time, excessive drug use tends to destroy people's lives, and you don't want to buy into that problem. Now, next thing is extreme promiscuity. Is your partner someone who's been extremely promiscuous in the past? Now, I'm not talking specifically about women. I'm talking about women and men. I've worked with a number of couples where both men and women have had periods of extreme promiscuity or extended periods of extreme promiscuity, and their ability to pair bond is degraded by extreme promiscuity. So, has your partner been extremely promiscuous for an extended period of time? If the answer to that question is yes, then you need to think really, really long and hard is how long will they stick around? Because they might get bored really quickly. Yeah. Now, next thing is incompatible lifestyles. Say, for example, you've got a worker who works in corporate, in the city, or in a city, and their partner wants to chase the winter all around the world. Then there's an incompatible lifestyle. Another example would be a lawyer that probably wouldn't date a hippie or a beach bum surfer dude who just wants to catch waves. It's probably not a good idea to have a relationship like that. Next thing is mental health issues. Does your partner have mental health issues? Now, I'm not attempting to stigmatize mental health issues. Many people get into relationships with previous mental health issues. That said, if you can avoid that, it's probably useful. If someone has extreme anxiety, if someone has extreme depression, if someone has a lot of trauma from the past, they can cause substantial problems later on in the relationship that could be avoided at the beginning. All right. Next thing is someone who isn't emotionally available for the relationship. Are they already hooked? Are they emotionally stuck on somebody else? You need to ask that question. Are they still hung up on their ex? When you spend time with them, do they continually talk about their ex? All right. If that's the case, you need to make an evaluation. How committed will they be? If their ex knocks on the door in 18 months' time, will they go back to their ex? So this is a useful question to ask. Next thing is incompatible belief systems. If you're a woman and you meet a guy who believes all women are gold diggers and they're just trying to steal money from me, then that's not going to go so well. Or if you're a guy and you meet someone who's a radical feminist and believes all men are bastards, that might not turn out so well. You need to have compatible belief systems. Next thing is severe differences in libido. If one person is really, really high libido and the other person is either very low libido or asexual, having a relationship with them is probably a really bad idea, because then you're basically baking into your relationship permanent disagreements around sex. And they can be very difficult to overcome over time. If you meet someone, to be clear about and to ask about what their desire for sex is. Now, desire for sex changes all the time, as I've spoken about in my Understanding Sexual Desire video, which will be pinned up here. It's really important for you to have similar libidos. The final one is getting involved with someone who's married or in a relationship with somebody else. This might seem intrinsically obvious, but cheating in a relationship and getting involved with someone who's already in a relationship damages everybody involved. It damages the person who's cheated, the person who does the cheating with, and it damages the person who's cheated upon. It damages everyone. And the problem is, and which I've seen frequently, is if someone gets involved in a relationship with someone who is already married or in a relationship with somebody else, and they basically steal them from somebody else, then they always got the question inside their head is, will they look for somebody else other than me? Doing that at the beginning is a really bad idea. All right. Now, sometimes that can't be avoided. Sometimes people fall in love with inappropriately. That said, it's really important, if you're going to avoid things, these are the things to avoid. Just backtracking. So you want to avoid people who can't regulate their emotional states, have a poor emotional regulation capacity. You want to avoid people who are heavily into drugs. You want to avoid people who have spent large periods of time with extremely promiscuous. You want to avoid people having incompatible lifestyles. You need to avoid people who have severe mental health issues if you can. You need to look for someone who's emotionally available. If someone isn't emotionally available, probably a good idea to not date them. Someone who's incompatible with belief systems, that's a problem. If there's severe differences in libido, that's a problem. And if someone's already in a relationship with somebody else or married, that's a problem as well. People are capable of change from a rocky start. People are capable of having a fantastic relationship, even if you've picked somebody who has some of those issues. But if you're going to have the best chance of success, it's best to give your relationship the fewest obstacles to overcome. So I hope this has helped. Please like and subscribe. I look forward to making some more content for you next week, and have a great day.